All right, let's get right into it. Titleist is making a huge claim about their new T350 irons. They're calling them the most forgiving clubs they have ever made. Now, when a brand that's famous for its tour-level gear says they finally cracked the code for the rest of us, well, you gotta ask.
Is it for real? I mean, Titleist is saying these are the best game improvement irons they've ever put out. That is a bold statement. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to break down all the evidence and see if these clubs actually live up to all that hype.
Okay, so to really get what Titleist is trying to pull off here, we've got to talk about a problem that has honestly frustrated average golfers for years. It's this choice, this compromise that you've always had to make.
And this is it, right? The classic trade-off. On one side, you've got performance. You need that help, that forgiveness when you don't catch it perfectly. But on the other side, you want a club that looks good, something sleek that gives you confidence when you're standing over the ball. And for the longest time, you couldn't have both. Game improvement irons, yeah, they worked. But let's be honest, a lot of them were just horrendous to look at.
And what's so interesting is that Titleist, well, they haven't really been the go-to brand for most of us, for the golfers who actually need this kind of help. Their whole reputation was built on making these beautiful, precise irons for the best of the best, the tour pros.
So that brings us right here to the T350. And Titleist is basically saying this is their answer to that age-old problem. It's the club that promises all the help you could want, but without that ugly trade-off in the looks department.
And hey, just so we're all on the same page, when we talk about a game improvement iron, this is what we mean. It's a club that's literally engineered from the ground up to help regular golfers like us get more distance and, better results, especially when our swing isn't exactly perfect.
So how'd they pull it off? Well, it starts with this hollow head design. That's where a lot of the forgiveness and speed comes from. And yeah, it's definitely a bit chunkier than the other T-Series irons, no doubt about it. But, and this is the key part, it's wrapped in this gorgeous chrome finish. So even with that bigger size, it still looks sleek and totally premium when you're standing over the ball.
All right, so it looks the part, but the real promise here is forgiveness, right? And to really test that, you've got to hit some bad shots on purpose. So let's throw this thing into what I'm calling the forgiveness gauntlet.
First up, an intentionally terrible strike with the 9-iron. I mean, we are talking so low on the face, it was barely on there. You know the shot, the one that usually just dribbles out in front of you and goes absolutely nowhere.
And the result? Get this, 153 yards of carry on that awful strike. And it wasn't just the distance. It landed softly enough to actually hold the green. That is seriously impressive for a shot that bad.
Okay, fine. So what about another super common miss? The next test was a shot hit way, way out on the toe. Another one of those shots that, with most irons, is just a total disaster. You lose a ton of distance, and it's probably going way off to the right.
And yet, look at this, 177 yards of carry. I mean, it felt like half the ball missed the face entirely, and it still produced a powerful, totally playable shot. That just shows you how stable and forgiving this club head really is.
So after seeing stuff like that, the conclusion was pretty simple. The reviewer basically said, it's still done that. Are these irons game improvement? Yes, they are. You just can't argue with that kind of performance on miss hits. The proof is right there. But look, forgiveness is only half the battle. A truly great game improvement iron has to reward you when you actually hit a good one, right? So, what happens when you pure it? When you catch one right out of the middle?
Okay, let's look at the numbers. If you put the T350 7-iron up against the T200, which is more of a player's iron, the T350 went 4 yards farther. Now, that's not a huge surprise because the loft is stronger, it's built for distance. But here's the really important part. The peak height was almost identical, and that means the ball is still flying high enough to actually stop on the green, even with a little less spin.
All right, now for the real fireworks. The 5-iron in this set, it has a 23-degree loft. That is crazy strong. So let's see what happens when you hit one absolutely pure. And that's the reaction you get, that perfect sound at impact, and then just an immediate, wow, that was right in the middle. Yes, that is what it does. That sound, that feeling, that's the club just screaming at you that it unleashed everything it has. And the result? An absolute rocket ship. 208 yards of carry. From a 5-iron, that's just explosive. That's what happens when you combine all that forgiveness tech with a seriously powerful design. So, after putting these things through the ringer, testing the absolute worst shots and the very best ones, what's the final verdict? Let's pull it all together.
Okay, let's be realistic here. This is not a magic wand. It's not going to fix a really bad swing. If you hit a big high slice, well, you're probably still going to hit a big high slice. But for those super common misses, hitting it a little thin or a little off the toe, the way this club performs is it's exceptionally impressive.
So who should be taking a hard look at these? Well, the answer is pretty clear. It's for golfers who need the most help they can get. Players who are just looking for maximum forgiveness. That little bit of offset might also really help if you fight that slice. And hey, it's also a fantastic choice for better players who just want to swap in a more forgiving long iron at the top of their set. And that brings us right back to where we started. With the T350, Titleist has somehow managed to pack incredible forgiveness and serious distance into a club that looks and feels absolutely premium. And it really makes you wonder, could this finally be it? The end of having to choose between a club that works and a club that looks good? Could this be the end of ugly irons for good?